Hello, everyone. Good evening and welcome. This is the AmCham Sri Lanka webinar series, Knowledge Hub webinar series, and we're pleased to welcome you this afternoon to the fourth of our webinars, which is all based on communication and positive positioning. Part one, of course, is today and part two is tomorrow. Part one will focus on effective communication both on and offline, especially now that we're pretty much in an era and in a situation where everything in our lives seems to have gone online, including the lives of our children. So it's a discussion on communication, on the positivity of communication and how it should sort of be molded. It's also about, we're planning to focus actually today, and CJ will take you through that in a little while, on the less talked about aspects of communication. So what you need to do to maintain presence on, for instance, a video conferencing or a video presentation, and the little aspects like that. So without too much ado, let me now do the introductions, and then I will hand over to CJ, who is your moderator for today, and will take you through the rest of what we have planned. So let me start by introducing the lovely ladies on the panel. Janice is not yet joined us. She's having a little bit of technical difficulty. We hope that she will get online. And as soon as she does, I will do a complete introduction for her. But let me get on to Ruwani Hettiarachchi. She's the Chief Growth Officer at Hemas Holdings PLC. Ruwani leads growth and mergers and acquisitions for Hemas Holdings. Prior to her role at Hemas, Ruwani was the CEO and founder of Vox & Company, a boutique strategy consultancy firm where she helped local and foreign investors navigate Sri Lanka for greenfield investments and acquisitions in healthcare, education, agriculture, and industrials. She was also the head of research and consulting at Stax, a US-based strategy consulting firm, for 6 years, where she worked in commercial due diligence for private equity leveraged buyouts across multiple verticals, including healthcare, financial services, industrials, energy, and education. Ruwani is on the board of HealthNet Private Limited and has a particular interest in universally accessible, affordable healthcare, something Sri Lanka prides itself in. She previously served on the board of Colombo Academy of Hospitality Management at SLIIT and is an MA in economics from the University of Edinburgh. Next is Mevan Peiris. Mevan is the head of operations for Pick Me Food, a delivery startup in Sri Lanka. Needs no introduction to us all, kind of been what we've been living on in the last 2 months. He also serves in the advisory council of the Worldwide Global Shapers Community, a network of inspiring young people initiated by the World Economic Forum. Mevan was recognized in the Forbes 30 Under 30 list in 2020 under the consumer technology category. He was formerly head of marketing at Elephant House Beverages, the leading beverage brand in Sri Lanka, under the parent company John King's Holdings, the country's largest listed conglomerate. He was responsible for the diverse portfolio of products and brands in the company. He holds a BSc in International Relations and a diploma in economics from the University of London. Mevan is an alumni of St. Thomas's College, Mount Lavinia, and was the recipient of the prestigious Sarva Memorial Prize, awarded annually to a single student demonstrating excellence and future potential, which of course he's lived up to. Pubudu Indatissa is our next panelist. Pubudu holds an MBA in Business Administration and Marketing. He's the Chief Sales and Marketing Officer of the Colombo School of Business Management. He's a former VP Sales at Hettiarachchi Lanka Private Limited, and that Hettiarachchi song, I'm sure, had something to do with him, one that still sticks in all our memories. He's also the former General Manager Sales and Distributors of Mobitel Private Limited. So a telco man for you who's now switched over to the education sector. Both interesting sectors and interesting in terms of communication and how that works for us. And of course, your moderator for today, Chrishantha Jayasinghe, or as he's known to all of us, CJ. CJ refers to himself as the growth whisperer because he's passionate about creating growth, whether it be helping brands to gain market share, helping organizations to get more participation in events and that sort of thing, or helping people to grow in knowledge and career opportunities. CJ absolutely enjoys that challenge. CJ has 3 decades of MarCom experience under his belt and is the managing director of Sarva Colombo, a strategic communications consultancy. Again, needs no introduction. And he's also director of several other smaller companies of his own, which is Infection, which is a digital marketing company, Mediation, a media buying company, and Mantram, as well as Purpose Global, a cause-oriented lifestyle company. And of course, there is me, myself, and I, your host and facilitator for this evening. It's a General Manager and ED of the American Chamber of Commerce in Sri Lanka. So without nattering on, as I keep saying I want to do, over to you, CJ, to take us through this interesting conversation that we have planned.
All right. Thank you, Rai. Thank you very much. And good evening to everyone, especially to the members of my eminent panel. So you see, today we see quite a unique situation in the marketplace. According to a Kanta study titled the COVID-19 Barometer, which was done after the entire country went into lockdown, there is no better time to communicate than now. TV viewership has increased by as much as 60%. Then even non-prime time belts are having prime time viewership figures. Adults and kids are glued to the televisions, whilst the youngsters are online trying to entertain themselves. But on the other hand, businesses are unable to manufacture products and distribute them. Shops are closed. How can people buy my product? Why should I advertise when the purpose of advertising is to sell? These are the questions entrepreneurs ask themselves. However, the Kanta research very clearly says that the Sri Lankan population expects their favorite brands to continue to engage with them. Overall, people are anxious about their future. In fact, they are more worried about financial stability and disruption in life than being infected by COVID-19. Of course, people are planning to save more and cut down on what they consider non-essential items after all this is over. However, amazingly, there is this massive sense of pride and nationalism in the air. So amidst all this, we see, certain people on certain corporates, for example, right, they are warning, they are posturing, saying, some are saying the glass is half full, the others are saying the glass is half empty. For example, like some are warning of dire economic consequences, job cuts, salary cuts, virtually the economy is collapsing. And then there are others such as Dhammika Pereira and Dilip Jayavira talking very, very optimistically. So I don't think Janice has come in yet. So my first question is going to Pubudu. Pubudu, there's a lot of information. In fact, you could say we are flooded with information, right? And a lot of data because of all this technology around us. How does one interpret this data to innovate and adapt in this climate and to communicate this to different segments? Pubudu, feel free to share with us some experiences from maybe your telecom experience as well as your education experience. Please, Pubudu.
Thank you very much, CJ. First, let me actually say a very good afternoon or evening to all the participants who has come to this such a wonderful webinar program this evening. It's a fantastic, actually, this is a good opportunity to have a good engagement with different sectors, representation from different segments. Yeah, I know actually there are a lot of people be registered in telecom sector, SME, even certain other corporate and also certain markets as well. So we all know actually this current situation is a new normal situation. So where actually we cannot go back and do what we have been doing. So therefore, it is very important. So we got to think very positively where we got to change the way we are doing things as well, where we are thinking, also we may be looking at certain perspective where we got to change. So why actually effective way of using data to reach segments, customers are very, very vital. So what I have seen actually when you look at this current situation, customers' behaviors being changed drastically because the customers also very much educated now, because what happened when you looked at compared to COVID-19 prior to that, our culturally we were a bit not that enthusiastic to use different tech savvy devices, various platforms. Now, these shorter period of time, people have moved themselves to a different platform, utilizing or associating like screens. They're like using screen. Like you said, actually TV, yes, in front of TV, they're spending quite a lot of time. They're getting a lot of jargon. What's going on? What's going to happen tomorrow? What's the outcome? Can we manage this situation? Various factors like that. But same time, there was another segment, actually, they were much more unique, where they were dealing with different devices, smartphones, laptop, and there are many gadgets they were associating, where they were improving, going through different channels to identify what's exactly happening in the other side of the world as well. So therefore, I believe this current situation, we have a huge opportunity, as you explained. Actually, our tycoons in Sri Lanka, Dhammika, and Lichai, because they are always optimistic and they're very positive as well. So like that, we also very positive that we can move forward to achieve our expected results. So what I want to share with you all, basically, when we are actually going to utilize those available data to build a very good strategic communication plan or a message to influence our end user, we have to make sure they are get inspired, motivated to look at that particular message, to see how benefits they can get out of this, whether this is first required or not. So therefore, I believe with all the stakeholders currently, like MarCom expertise, brand architect expertise, sales consultants. Now we all got to work together because we all have a responsibility, accountability, and we got to do the basics once again, right? So basically, I do understand we actually done a business plan last quarter of 2019 to get prepared for 2020. Now with the current situation, we had to again redefine and see how we can bounce back to go for a better way of managing our requirements. So therefore, as expertise or new generation who want to rally around with this MarCom industry or sales or especially like brand building, I believe actually data management is a key. We got to have a good idea about what sort of data that we need to make certain decisions to achieve our objective, to take our message to certain geography, not only Western province, maybe nationally, maybe geographically, maybe province-wise, maybe even we got to take our message to globally as well, depending on type of business that we are doing. So therefore, the data management is a very key area where we got to have a broader knowledge, in the sense, I know a lot of people having knowledge, but what I'm asking from the audience or other people who are surrounding us to go back to basic and find out where we are very much good in managing data, what sort of data that we got to use according to this post-COVID-19, the new era. So we call always that actually a new normal situation. The new normal situation, we cannot go on the same basic data. Sometimes what we got to do is, as individuals, we got to find out whether these data that we have, are they up-to-date data? Are we using correct data? So do we have that kind of data? Because things I do understand certain companies, certain institutes, when you looked at telecom sector, yes, they do have data on profiling of customer, behavior of customer, their usage pattern, and how frequent they spend money, how frequent they get engaged with them. Yes, they do have. But this particular situation, we have to go beyond that situation to find out how effectively we can use our available data just to go to a next level of MarCom communication to inspire our customers in the market, all the segments. So that's the one. And other thing is the analytic knowledge. Once again, we had to redefine and see how effectively we can improve that knowledge to utilize our available data factors to focus on our future prospective markets or segments. And that's actually all about the analytic knowledge. We can go through even Google. Also, they have that particular area as well. But yet, what we got to do is we got to focus on that. But other thing is, third point is what I'm saying, what we have to do is the management, inside of management. Inside is saying, when you looked at certain programs or case studies, do we have a really good understanding about different segments, customers, profiling, portfolios, and also how we're going to take our message, the communication to the end user. So that's a very, very important at this moment. So that's why I'm saying once again, saying what we got to do is basically we got to have a broader knowledge on data management, where we have to spend a lot of time once again. And it's good because that way the market is demanding a quality. Because as you said before, CJ, you said people are worried about their investment, right? The companies, I do understand, most of the companies till next year, March onward, they will spend a lot of time on controlling their operational costs, right? So in the sense, when you looked at actually telecom market, the size of the market is about 225 billion market. Out of 225 billion, overall, they're spending about 30 to 35% on MarCom plus brand building to achieve their respective business goals or business achievement as per their annual business plan. So because now situation as arises, what they will do is, end of the day, they have to show the P&L to their board of governance. So therefore, what they're going to plan is they will see where they can manage their different verticals to save money. Yes, I do understand it's there, but as we discussed, actually, when it comes to online way of managing strategically to achieve our customer or take our message to the end user, we have quite a lot of opportunities. So analytic knowledge is number two, as I explained. Inside management, yes, what we got to do is rather copying what others are doing, we had to spend quite a lot of time to see how things are working locally and how things are working globally as well. But globally, there are a lot of tools where when you go through the the Google, there are a lot of companies, they already adapt to this situation. They are going to have a strategy B, the game plan B for this achievement. But what I'm trying to say is, same time, I just want to take example as well. So when you come to data management, it's a broad area. So basically, when you looked at actually, this is a digital marketing landscape once comes under that. So therefore, we got to have a really good understanding and the knowledge to what sort of data that we want to utilize to achieve that. So basically, even what I see, actually, I just want to recommend. I do understand I'm just talking about the people who are running with their own website, right? That's a one area. Are we actually evaluating the progress of people who are visiting our own website? Right? That's another area where I had looked at. Why it is very important to understand the type of consumers who are visiting our website, the portal. And same time, we got to understand, are we having a follow-up strategy to identify people who visited to find out what type of people are there? What's their behavior? What's their requirement? Where are they attached to? Are they associating any cross-functional brand association? So those important information are very vital, because what I'm trying to say, even the Facebook, because we say, okay, there are a lot of people visited that particular video or a visual or a advertisement or whatever we are putting under this corporate Facebook or their own Facebook. But people are a little bit reluctant to find out type of customer that they have visited. So how can we follow up? So that's why I'm trying to bring to your attention why data is very important, right? So playing with those is very, very important. Because sometimes actually we don't know. We may got a customer who is younger, fitness service, already visited. But now what we have to do is the new normal situation, COVID-19, asking us to, hey, profile, look at our profile, look at our customer. The current visibility, branding, communication or strategy, the red hotspots, are they going to work for that particular unique persona? So that's why what we're going to do is, as future generation of this MarCom sales branding got think about, yes, we got a customer who visited our platform. Yes, we can get all these details from the Google, right? There's a sector. So once you get enrolled, you can get all type of behavior, where they're coming from, are they locally or they're foreign, or where they live, what's their requirement, their hobby, their integration, various factors. So what I'm trying to say, yes, when you look at that, once we identify, yes, we have to change the way we approach into focus individually to get that customer as well. So that's why it is very, very important actually going ourselves to that segment to identify how we can use available data, and also what sort of data that we require to go to the next level as well. So before you hand over to the next delegate, I would say actually there are certain information I just want to share, because the thing is, when you look at Sri Lanka, it's a market. Literacy level is very high. One of the best literacy levels we have in Sri Lanka compared to Southeast Asia market, 95%. And smartphone penetration gone up to 43%. And internet association has gone up to 65% now. 65%. And also, what I want to bring to attention while looking at those statistics data, the daytime people who are at home in Sri Lanka, we have about 65%. That's another market first, another market. So that I'm saying, as MarCom specialists, when we are building our strategy to take our message to the end user, we got to look at all these segments, and also what type of customers are there, and who are the other customers not associating with other brand. How we can inspire them for that. Of course, yes, we got to have a broader knowledge about managing our available data to understand how it. That's why I said now it's an opportunity for everyone first to bounce back and see how we can improve ourselves, change ourselves for post-COVID-19. That's very, very vital. What I'll do is I'll share a couple of other case studies as well in between. There are classic good case studies where you can actually give me about 2 minutes. I can basically, when you looked at the actually travel, tourism, hospitality trade, actually they use this platform through OTA over there. So they are always behind. Their weak data management is quite important for them as well. So that's, I just want to just open up that particular case study, but I will share later. Thank you so much, CJ. Over to you.
Yes, thank you, Pubudu. It's very interesting you mentioned screens because I heard that YouTube today is the 3rd channel in Sri Lankan entertainment. What's happening is a lot of people are watching conventional TV, consuming news, consuming teledrama on YouTube or on screens itself. So your viewership is still, even though it's not on conventional TV, your people are getting exposed to your message online. So welcome, Janice. Welcome. And I knew you had some technical difficulties. So interestingly, today's discussion is about communication both online and offline. And when I was thinking about it, paradoxically, I realized that, you know, even our offline communication happens online these days. For instance, all our communication with our staff is a Zoom or a video conference. The board meetings are video conference. Then even our client meetings are video conference. And sometimes we also have, you know, drinks with friends via video conference these days, because our meetings are, you know, because our movements are limited.
Absolutely.
So I know, Janice, now you are in event management and destination weddings, right? And most of your meetings with your staff and so on must be done on video, especially when you're pitching new projects to or prospective new couples, say, or a new MICE seminar, which is happening. So what we don't realize is when we are presenting off a screen, we are actually, performing with a handicap. We don't have, the advantage of body movement. We can't reiterate or highlight a point and use passion as much as we would face to face. So we are just, a 2D screen or 2D face on a screen. So do tell me, Janice, how would someone handle this kind of situation and how do you handle it? That's my question to you.
Thanks, CJ, and thank you for having me on. Sorry, I was a bit late to join in, some technical difficulties, very much a part of what I was going to talk about, in fact, ironically. And before I get into a little bit more on positive posturing online and offline, I think we need to sort of always start with the grassroots. And I think a positive attitude is the first place I have personally looked at and started with, and I encourage everyone else listening in. Denzel Washington says, a bad attitude is like a flat tire. Until you change it, it's not going anywhere. And I think that's true in any case, and much like all of us have experienced being in curfew for the last so many months, we have had to check our cars for flat tires and rodent invasions and all sorts of things before we got it out back on the street. Likewise, we've got to check ourselves and assess where we are, how we're dealing with the situation, how we're responding to it. And I feel three very important questions we should ask ourselves, the 3 W's as I like to call it: why, what, and who. Why we are doing what we do, what we are doing, and who we're doing it for. I'm a firm believer that we should never do anything we're not passionate about. We shouldn't just do things for the sake of doing it. Money can be made anywhere, in any form, if we dedicate effort and time and thought process to it. So we need, if once we've identified this for ourselves, it's much easier to figure out how to do it and how to do it in the context we are in. So I would apply this. I come from a banking background, and then have moved into something more creative, such as event planning and destination and MICE markets. And I found this to be helpful to understand. Once we've got our attitude in check, positioning ourselves is important. And I have been involved in my company for 15 years. And I have gone through the war, financial crisis, multiple other crises, and then most recently last year we had to deal with another crisis. And being in the tourism industry, where you're constantly having to re-angle your position and figure out how to present yourselves to your clients, to your potential markets, locally and internationally, it's always an interesting challenge, I would like to say. It keeps us going, it keeps us getting complacent. So something I'd like to refer to, Jack Dorsey, CEO of Twitter, he says, any skill can be learned and taught, but passion cannot. So it's important to keep that passion when you're positioning yourself, because 10% is what happens to you. 90% is how you respond and how you handle that situation. Taking it from there, once you've got that under your belt, positive posturing in this context, like CJ just said, we had a lot of tools we worked with, what you wear, how you present yourself, who pitches which part, who approaches which potential client based on the strength of your team, how does the PowerPoint presentation look, what other elements do you include when you're pitching something. A lot of those things are not at our disposal these days. We don't have the ability to even see how the bottom part of most people look, let alone, observe body language. So when we think about this context, preparedness to start with, preparing for your meeting, one is testing your technical side out is key. And then figuring out your environment, right? Be comfortable, wear something that's comfortable. If you're in a non-air conditioned home or room, you may not be most comfortable in a jacket. You may want to be in some slightly lighter clothing. Assess the lighting in your room. You don't want to be in a gloomy room where you look like you are being shadowed by everything around you. The position of your light is very important. You shouldn't be backlit. You should be forward lit, your face lit. Positioning yourself on your screen, not too down there, not too high up, and etc. Keeping a sufficient distance so that you can appeal to your audience that you're pitching to. Sitting up straight, trying to move around less, because that can be distracting when you are presenting or having a meeting. Avoid touching your face, your ears, your nose. This is just a good practice for general hygiene offline and online now, particularly with COVID-19. Keeping the people around you aware of your meeting schedule. This is very crucial, and I'm sure most of us have seen many bloopers these days on YouTube. You don't want someone walking around in their underwear between your meeting, or one of your children screaming, asking for chocolate or milk or food to be fed. So just being aware of these elements that can contribute to the disruption of a presentation of the pitch or a meeting, that an important meeting. Keeping your phone on silent is a practical thing, and using virtual background, something like I've done right now for display. So it helps you create an environment that may look different from meeting to meeting if you're going in with the same group of people. It can also be used for to illustrate different purposes. Understanding the features of the different platforms. You've got Zoom, such as this, and you've got WebEx and Google Hangout, and a multitude of platforms now that you can use. Recording meetings also is advantageous, because you can one, document what's been said and for future reference and meeting documentation, but it's also a good way to assess how you feel the pitch went across, or how you feel things were presented to your client, and improve on this from the tone you've used to the facial expressions. It's also a good way to monitor and assess the facial expressions of those present at the meeting to see how they responded to what you were saying. And if you feel an alteration or someone wasn't really buying what you were saying, you can always follow that up with a phone call. These are very important aspects to consider when you're preparing. Then you've got the meeting itself. You would start your meeting with a general good greeting. This helps assess. Now, when I do it with my team on a daily basis, it helps me assess where they are in terms of that morning, how much of sleep they've had or not, how many movies they've watched, till what time in the morning. This kind of gives me an indication of how tuned in they are. And these are important elements in this. There may be little things, but they're important to help each other as a working community function better. We need to then, I think it's important to lay out a structure for the meeting, so that way everyone knows what's going to happen through the rest of the hour or 45 minutes. They also will have knowledge of to prepare themselves if their input is required through the meeting. Keeping it on mute while someone is presenting is important. Reeling in people during a conversation or a discussion. Now, this is a slightly harder thing to do, which was a lot easier to do in person, but observing your audience, that is key, because this will help you adjust what you are saying or what you are doing. When it's a closed room meeting and it's invitation only, it's easier to then maybe say things like, CJ, don't you agree with me? Or Rai, what do you think about that? So those are a few techniques to bring into your everyday discussions or meeting forums. But when it's an open forum, you may want to use tools like videos or PPTs or illustrations, or even a joke or a quote that can help illustrate and break the monotony of the presentation. And finally, on the meeting itself, I think empathy is a big part of our society. We have a lot of practice in this, I think, as Sri Lankans. We've had to deal with a lot. We've learned to empathize. We've also learned to sometimes be overly critical, because we have all gone through hardships. So empathizing, understanding the new norm that we are in, helping people figure it out and work it out and understand better will help us all function on a better level. This is the future. It has been heading this way. We just got fast-tracked due to COVID-19. We need to get everybody on board as much as possible. Yes, human interaction will not stop. It'll always be important, but people will find better ways such as this to limit their time on the road. I see a lot of, when it comes to event industries, I see a lot of clients who will not be flying down to see the venues. They will rather want a walkthrough, a virtual walkthrough. So augmented realities will become more more in demand. In fact, we have seen, and we are in the process of planning a couple of events online, social and corporate, that we are looking at. There are already plenty out there, from graduations to weddings that have been done on Zoom. So it's an exciting future, I think, for MarCom and the digital world. And I look forward to being a part of it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for the tips on screen etiquette. Actually, that's something I had completely, not realized. And that was an awesome refresher. Thank you, Janice. My next question is to Ruwani. So this is the second time Hemas has to go into crisis mode within a year. Firstly, thanks to the Easter bombings, which was actually no fault of Hemas, and now due to COVID-19. So Ruwani, I think you have more hands-on practical experience than any of us here on how to pivot and perform in these kinds of situations. Could you share with us your perspectives and experience, please?
Yes, thank you very much, Chrishantha, for that question. I'm going to qualify my comments by stating that I am not a communications professional, but I am happy to share my experience and observations of working closely with my colleagues who, really are in the thick of it. I think you nailed it, Chrishantha. At Hemas, we have really had a year like no other on that front. We really learned crisis communication very much the hard way. Like many of us in Sri Lanka on the 21st of April, 2019, our world was really turned upside down. In the aftermath of, the very, tragic Easter Sunday attacks, Hemas particularly was faced with a reality of malicious attacks, based on unfounded racial, on racial and ethnic lines. And particularly, from certain competitive quarters as well. While much of this was played out on social media, the effects, of course, reached, beyond that to our traders and our consumers. So up till that moment, I think Hemas, they had a solid, corporate communications team, much like any other large business group, who recommended strategy and crafted our message and, deliberated on what kind of media to use. But, at a group level, we were really focused on kind of very modestly communicating the great things that the group does, be it a new business venture or achievements or activities around philanthropy or sustainability. So we were not, ever excessively flamboyant, where Hemas is a bit media shy, and it's very central to the ethos of modesty is very central to the Hemas ethos. But we very quickly thrust into an unpleasant limelight. So we were dealing with consumers who were very suspicious of the company, stakeholders who were puzzled and worried, and as well as helpless employees. They were really scrambling to the group's defense against some of these malicious attacks. So, we had to sort of throw our playbook and sort of start from scratch, throw it out and start from scratch in a way. So last year what happened was, a group of people who were, reluctant communicators at best were really pushed into roles where we needed to quickly restore the image of the group in the public eye. We had to set the record straight for stakeholders. These are the networks of traders whose livelihood depend on our ability to sell our products. And most importantly, our employees who are really, bearing the brunt of these unpleasant accusations. They needed support. We needed to create an atmosphere where they believed deeply that the group, stood shoulder to shoulder with them while encouraging them not to be combative. So we had to learn a whole lot of, communications tactics at, almost at once. So this is a journey that we've been on in the past year, and it really wasn't easy. We tried many different avenues. We tried many different media and messaging. We fell down and scraped our knees a few times, but we kept getting up, kept trying. I think what really sort of pulled us through in the end was that we kept very open channels of communication. So, whatever messaging went out was often circulated and bounced around by different teams of people to sort of gauge potential receptivity. We continuously engaged with our consumers to assess sentiments, and everybody in the organization, from the chairman and right across, physically visited our stakeholders. I think we may have visited more than 2,000 retailers, last year on foot. So it was almost like a masterclass in crisis communication across multiple stakeholders, multiple media, door-to-door, email, social media, recorded messages. So fast forward to this year, it all sort of seems eerily familiar. We've learned the importance and power of crisis communication. And, I can't say that we have perfected it. But, my observation of our effort has really been that it's markedly better. And if I were to sort of distill the sort of 5 specific lessons that we have learned, if you don't mind. I'd love to sort of share what we learned. So the first, lesson is really about purpose. At Hemas, our purpose is to bring healthful ways of living and life to families across Sri Lanka. So it's about, calling your teams to a higher purpose. And it's very clear and simple. And at the time of COVID-19, we didn't have to look very far to live this purpose. Our job was to, ensure that the people of Sri Lanka had their medicines supplied. Our hospitals were equipped, our healthcare workers were safe and disseminating high quality information on the pandemic. We're Sri Lanka's largest domestic manufacturer of home and personal care products, and we needed to ensure that, even despite the enormous logistical difficulties of not being able to move across borders and boundaries, that our, personal care and sanitary products were widely available as well. So we were essentially, we were an essential services organization. So we needed to keep those engines running, and our CEO Stephen in every single remark and recorded message references this purpose. So when I feel like what I am doing is in service to the people of my country, I shift my focus from my own worries to really serve that purpose. So and also obviously doubling down on that by appreciating the teams who are working. So, we had folks who were coming into work to manufacture, products, distribute medicines, and they're risking their life and their health to go to work and support the sanitation efforts across the country. So really recognizing those efforts was important. I think the sort of second lesson here was that we wanted to over communicate on the facts. So we had to be very, very speedy off the mark. And unlike last year, we took a little while to react and respond. So we very quickly, within hours, assembled a crisis team. They were linked to a communications team very closely. Immediately kicking off daily meetings and putting a plan together to communicate with the outside world as well as our employees. So we're a sizable company, about 7,000 people across many, many locations in multiple languages and countries. So ensuring that high quality information, is getting to people in an understandable way, so that this is a complex machine, of text messages, emails, posters, word of mouth, phone calls. So we really needed to, make sure that all our channels of communication were open to disseminate high quality information to our employees about, the facts. We also wanted to, communicate with the outside world too, as a healthcare group, the largest private healthcare company in Sri Lanka. We needed to be a sort of bastion of good quality healthcare information. So emphasizing the messages of healthful living. So if you follow us on social media, you'll notice that we generated a ton of content about quarantine, about healthful living, about what to do if you're stuck at home, about, teaching your children. So I think that was, communicating on facts and communicating frequently was really important. The third is really about authenticity. So, delivering a sort of very simple and straightforward message while staying true to yourself is very hard, actually. It's not in fact easy to declutter your message only to a few specific points and also ensure that it remains, sincere and authentic. So thankfully, Hemas is very fortunate to have leaders who, can speak with candor and who are passionate about the people we work with. So every, message and communication carries, that warmth in its tone, an acknowledgement of the difficulties that people are going through, and a continued reminder that the first priority is the health and safety of the Hemas family. And, finally, also reassurance that we can be stronger, we can be even stronger once, if we pull through this emerging crisis. And obviously being naturally sensitive around the economic implications conditions to many people. People's incomes were naturally impaired. So communicating those kinds of sensitive messages requires a lot of deliberation and focus, and making sure that we are being authentic and we're living that authenticity. I know that some of this discussion is also about positivity, and there's some critique and debate about whether positivity is posturing, but I think with what we can anticipate to be the impact to the Sri Lankan economy from the effects of COVID-19, it would really challenge anyone to remain optimistic, but it is absolutely necessary. If the leadership doesn't convey a sense of optimism about the future, we might as well curl up and kind of admit defeat, right? So that's not, I think, our DNA as a nation. I think Janice referred to resilience, being through a number of different phases of crises in Sri Lanka, and it's certainly not the DNA of many Sri Lankan enterprises. So despite the real apprehensions we have, we've built an almost like infectious desire to emerge stronger out of this. Right now, across Hemas, there's a group-wide effort to call for great ideas in a post-COVID world, and so that's involving everybody. Saying the group CEOs called for the best ideas. They're going to be funded to help our consumers live better, live more healthful lives. And then finally, I think the fifth element that really needs to be played up is that of building trust. So in the middle of the misinformation of COVID-19, organizations need to really focus on disseminating reliable information. So we, had to, very quickly, as obviously again as a healthcare company, take leadership in that. So we reached out to, an infectious diseases specialist. We put a workplace health and safety physician on our panel. So making sure that they are accessible, reachable, they're doing webinars, and that we're disseminating trustworthy information, to the general public as well as our employees at large, and communicating simple things. So like as we return back to work, there's communications going out, through many channels about what we can expect when we come back to work. So yesterday I went into work. I have to follow an entire process to wash my hands, to go through a chemical bath. So all of this I was prepared for beforehand. I was asked not to wear jewelry to work. I was asked to tie my hair back. So, had I not, had that not been communicated to me, it would have all been a surprise and an inconvenience. So, this is really important as well. And I really can't emphasize the trust issue enough. Who delivers the message makes a lot of difference. There was a sentiment survey done by Pepper Cube Research and Consulting, and during COVID, and one of the really interesting stats that I found is that 80% of this country feels that the government is doing really well on the communications front, and I really echo that. So you see every evening, the DG Health and the head of the COVID-19 task force, they're speaking very soberly and clearly about facts. They're reassuring the people of Sri Lanka on television, a media that's obviously grown in significantly in consumption. So people are really turning to and relying on these individuals who are, not politicians. They're, they're members of, they're experts in their own right, and really, building on that trust. So I would say those are the sort of 5 key areas that we have learned. We're not, experts at this by any means, but we're still learning. So that was really the experience that we took from last year and built on this year.
Thank you, Ruwani. I agree with you 100%. We have to be optimistic at all times. And I mean, this is this is just another challenge which has come on our path, if you look at the past 30 years or so. So Mevan, my next questions are to you. Firstly, Mevan, I want to congratulate you on the Forbes, being on the Forbes 30 under 30 list. We are delighted for you and proud to have a Sri Lankan on that list. So congratulations. Now, Mevan, I know Pick Me Too went through a difficult time after Easter
CJ,
bombing.
let me interrupt you there for just a moment. Not only is Mevan on doing Sri Lanka proud as on the Forbes list, he's also a new dad. So congratulations to you and the wife on that as well.
Congratulations again, double congratulations. So Mevan, Pick Me, went through a difficult time similar to Hemas after the Easter bombings. But when it came to COVID-19, Pick Me was quite literally the knight in shining armor, who came to save us. In fact, some of your harshest critics would have starved if not for the life-saving deliveries which you all did. Could you just talk us through this? This is the first question. I have another question for you later on, but would you mind answering this question first? Mevan, we can't hear you.
Check. Am I now clear?
Yes.
All right. Okay, great. So thank you for the compliments, especially with being a new dad. It's probably the most challenging job that I'm going to undertake at the moment. But yeah, CJ, just to dive in, I mean, I don't want to get too technical or get too deep into the question about what happened after the East attack. I think Ruwani touched on it. A few companies around Sri Lanka, just like it's happened all over the world, was just purely victim of certain racist agendas. And I think that passed also fairly soon, I might add. But yes, as you said, this year around, especially during COVID, what really happened was that we were thinking to ourselves, we knew that we had to have an advanced role in the delivery of food, because around the world we had case studies coming in already about how China had, really focused on the delivery, and the e-commerce platforms have ramped up. So while we were analyzing this, we really realized that, okay, there is also a huge need for essentials and also even LP gas delivery to households. So that's when the whole story started. We started delivering these. As you rightly said, there's been some really humbling and heartening comments and compliments from a lot of people who said that, it truly helped them get through those initial weeks that a lot of the other infrastructure was still getting in place. So we're really proud of that as a team, and we're also proud of our delivery fleet who came and understood that this was broadly like a national initiative, right, and really rallied behind. But also, CJ, I'd like to touch on, as you rightly said, communications in a crisis situation is really important, be it for PICMI, be it for anybody else. And as Ruwani mentioned before, I'm going to build on the whole fact of how the government has been communicating. Again, there's two major parts in the way that I see it. One is on frequency, the second is on credibility, and the third is on clarity, right? So these are the three. They're not kind of words of wisdom, but I think it's really this simple stuff, right? So if you take the government, we have a frequency, which is almost every single day. I just received the press release again today that the curfew is reimposed. So every single day in the evening, we're kind of getting into a routine of actually camping there and seeing what are we going to happen next. Credibility is coming from the people who are delivering it, very rightly so, because it's not the politicians who may have a certain bias within the people or certain segments of the people. It is rather public servants who are actually making these. And then the next is the clarity. You're not bombarding them with extreme technicalities or huge number of statistics or complicated stuff. It's just very simple. Even the press releases are drafted in very simple lingo so that ordinary people can understand. So it's the same thing that I think every company needs to adopt and address. And it's the same that we did as well in the initial phases. I remember, I think almost every day I was tweeting things out, just informing our consumer base of what's going to happen next. Again, we were very clear. We were saying, look, we're not going to do things that we cannot undertake. It's just going to be, 2 Sarva outlets today. It's going to be 5, 10, 20, 30. It's going to be 1 extra vendor. And then as of today, we have more than 600 vendors of essential goods. And we've also restarted our restaurant business by informing very clearly to the restaurant partners that we are willing to serve you. So I think if we broadly revolve around these three, any entity, any organization can maneuver their way through this whole clutter, this confusion. Because also on the side of the people, what we fail to sometimes realize is there's an increased opportunity. There is now an increased amount of free time and an attention span that probably people didn't have before to now pay attention, right? To listen to what's happening next. Obviously, Netflix reported that they had to revise their quarterly forecast for the second quarter of 2020 by 2.5% worldwide. That is huge, right? For Netflix, which already has like 1 billion views, to say that we're going to now, revise it for this quarter by 2.5%. So that just goes on to show that people do have time, right? I'm not saying that people are just aimlessly waiting at home, but they do have an increased level of attention. So it's just a matter of you communicating things frequently, clearly, and with credibility, because you need to follow up on what you say. You cannot overpromise and underdeliver. Really, really important. I think in the e-commerce space itself, I think we all know a lot of players who probably overcommitted or wasn't able to deliver because they just didn't anticipate what is to come. But there are also some great winners who either was very, very consistent in exactly what they could do, or even at times, undercommit and overdeliver. I think that's the best case scenario in most cases. So I'd like to really keep it short and say that it's those 3 points that we have to take away.
Right. Thank you, Mevan. One more question. You see, your background is in hospitality and FMCG, mainly soft drinks. So both these sectors would be affected by this kind of crisis. Could you share with us how you would handle this situation from a marketing and branding perspective, especially if you were still involved in this? Could you just share with us your thoughts?
Yeah. So CJ, I'm just going to break it into 2 parts. One is on the tourism and hospitality industry, and I'm not really referring only to hotels, but the entire leisure and F&B space as a whole, even going on to adjacent categories like event management, event hosting, conferences, and MICE market, etc. So I think Kimali spoke to Al Jazeera, I think the day before, on the broader government strategy that we're trying to craft out for tourism to kind of reposition, realign, get back in touch again with our source market and kind of see how we can have the necessary protocols in place. Because this is unlike any other crisis that we've had before, right? This is not like the crisis we had last year, where it was an isolated incident that was broadly contained within a span of about 1 week at most. And then it was only a matter of resilience kicking in and good communication to say that, okay, things are back to normal. This is not that. Communication alone is not going to get us anywhere. Again, we come back to over-promising and under-delivering. Because I remember there was, I'm sure it was well intended, but there was an advertisement going out saying that, Sri Lanka has high temperatures, you're not going to get COVID. I think that was a blatant mistake. That was complete overcommitment, right, from our side, because we didn't have an understanding of what we were committing to. So I think now in starting from like literally today onwards, what all players in the F&B and hospitality space needs to do is really communicate what you're good at. If your restaurant is not geared for social distancing, then don't say that you're going to open. Don't say that you've taken the necessary precautions. First work, because as I said again, right now we have a real health crisis, right? That is going to kind of continue on for the foreseeable future. We don't see, when the borders open up again, we have a very real risk of the contamination starting again. I think everybody knows that. So let's not be kind of, for lack of a better word, like, living in a fairy tale of sorts. Let's try to take the necessary action on ground to make sure that our businesses, be it a restaurant, be it a hotel, be it our airports, be it our vehicles that we're transporting people in, be it our events, that we take every single step necessary, and then let's communicate that in a real scenario. So I think that's going to have a great effect. And the credibility also we're building as we open our borders. We cannot have tons of foreigners coming into the island back again, and again our numbers rising. We have to follow through with whatever we've said we're going to do, right? And that's what the credibility is going to build. And obviously, back again with clarity, I think we have to just highlight the specific actions that we're going to do. What are the things that we've changed from the usual business scenario? And we can't just say we've taken all necessary precautions. What is all necessary precautions? Just mention whatever you've done specifically. And I think with these 3 in mind, broadly, customers will gain a lot more trust in the whole system. And Sri Lanka has a unique opportunity to be the destination. Yes, we've got a great offering in the tourism product, but also let's now be the destination that actually follows through with the right protocols. Let's make that our USP in the next 6 to 12 months, right? So that's on the tourism and hospitality front. With regards to FMCGs, again, Again, it's route to market. That's the real question with most FMCGs. How do you get your product to your consumers? So Elephant House, if you look at it, not because of my involvement, because it was the obvious choice. Obviously partnered with Pick Me. So we have Elephant House ice creams and soft drinks, and even cheese food products, delivering their products rather through Pick Me Food. And they've also expanded all the areas that we operate. So we're covering about 8 different districts at the moment and hope to cover more. So it's going to be the same for everybody else. How do you create this new channel that everybody was talking about, that was in a footnote in all your board presentations in your marketing plan, right? Annual plans. How do you now make this a reality, right? Classic example of Keel's. I know because I was there. The Keel's website is actually the oldest e-commerce platform in Sri Lanka. It was, I think, active since like about 2004 or something. But it was so rarely used, right? And now today, I think they've really managed to turn things around. A lot of learnings as well. So how do you now make this new channel something that really works? Get people who know how to cater to that market, adopt a set of marketing strategies that will be aligned, because especially with mass market brands like Elephant House and others, you're not going to have the same kind of impact if you follow the traditional marketing methodologies, even on digital, right? Even on digital now, there is a traditional way of marketing and a non-traditional, right? I'm not talking about TV, like that's over, right? You have to really think anew and market and communicate in a way that is actually going to get traction and be as close to the conversion cycle as possible with regards to some of the e-commerce platforms. So I would really see a route to market and the channel development that is a no-brainer. Whoever that really capitalizes and champions this in the next few months, we'll see a lot of traction for their products and services.
Thank you, Mevan. That was really insightful. I want Pubudu to quickly, Pubudu, you were talking about an interesting case study with data in the tourism sector. Could you maybe in a couple of seconds, less than a minute maybe, could you just describe it a little bit more for us and give us that example? You need to unmute, Pubudu.
Yeah, yes, CJ, that's good. Basically, yes, earlier we were discussing about how effectively we should use available data to reach or design our strategic communication plan to reach our end user, to inspire, to get word of embrace with our product, to consider, to make their buying decision. So this particular industry case study, I thought of sharing, especially this industries, tourism and travel and the hospitality. So basically, these companies actually, more or less, they are actually driven on data. So which means they are using online data, online, up to date. So what they're doing actually, they are using OTA over the air platform, where actually I just want to share this case study because even Mevan also opened up a different scope. He said actually when we are moving forward, we are not in position to continue the traditional way of we were doing certain marketing or any other strategies. So that's why it is very important. From my earlier pitch also, I requested our audience today, just look at all the success stories in locally well as globally, how things are happening. So from those learnings, we should be able to refresh our thinking pattern well as the strategies and also new ideology. How effectively that we have to change our thinking pattern or platform, right? So what I've actually identified, what they do is actually mostly they're using GDT, Google Data Trends, they analyze all the time, and Internet on the thing, which is called IoT, right? So basically, and number 3 is the electronic devices. So all 3 combination of that, they're trying to work with different customer segment to identify their real customer behavior, well as how the journey is going to start up, and what level of satisfaction they're expecting by each and every customer. And also knowing all these information, the very important information. I said, okay, Google data trends, Internet of Things, there are a lot of things that get connected. They are very complex. Everything is connected to a smart devices, smart cities, smart houses, because that way actually a lot of information are actually flowing to the system. So that way the company's institute have a really good situation to analyze and see how things are working, what sort of move they have to take it for the next move. So, and understanding and also buying, going to that kind of drive, I believe actually locally, our MarCom specialists, brand architect, and sales gurus or sales consultants, we got to have a broader knowledge about how all these things are working, the feature-wise, what sort of features they have, how these features can convert to a benefit, an advantage, and grabber, how we effectively take to our required customer segments as well. And on same time, actually, the way I think what I believe actually I got to understood about how to analyze those information that I have it, and also application for a correct decision making process. So all this necessary information going to help us to push us for a correct decision making process. So that's why it is very, very vital to learn from other segment, other sectors in the market locally well as globally, because other area where we had looked at when we are moving forward in future, in the sense the post-COVID era. So we got to have some sort of a decision framework. Right. The framework is very, very, very vital, rather going on ad hoc decisions, because when you look at the telecom sector, if you look at the heat ad, you can see the last page, before that page, because all are actually pitching on the same product, same solution. They're actually cutting each other throats. So rather becoming innovative. So if someone is focusing on data strategy to communicate their identify segments or customers, other guy has to think about different way of approaching to get hold of the customer. So rather than the same platform, that's why I'm saying decision-making framework, that very important to evaluate and select the input for big data initiatives. Because in this particular tourism industry, travel industry, they're actually masters in using those data to drive and select all the inputs to go for a bigger initiatives to make sure the customer always retain with them. And not only that, it will give you opportunity to do your cross and upsells as well. So now what happens in certain market, with using these platforms, OTA, there are a lot of ways you can get the information through different Google and various other factors as well. Now what they do is actually, they are actually promoting baggages for those people who are traveling overseas, traveling from local destinations, going overseas and going for a certain other requirements. And also they are actually value addition of clothes as well. So that's what I'm saying, because as Mevan explained, when you looked at Pick Me earlier, it was just a simple way of taking people, right? Now they have actually got to a different opportunity to identify how we can support the community based on their requirements. So what I'm trying from this way of sharing this, we got to look at the real pulse of the customer now, the pulse. Because the customer is not the same as before. The customer has been developed and educated. Now they become more tech-savvy users. So that's why it is important as individuals in this trade, we are very quite positive we can bounce back, achieve all our set results, but we got to have patience. We got to do basics. We cannot become like, we know everything. No, we have to go back and do our basic.
Thank you, Pubudu.
Back. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Wish you all the best once again.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, it seems with the new normal, there are certain challenges which we have to face. One of the things is actually technical challenges. I just realized without realizing it, I did something which Janice was telling us not to, which was to put my face above the camera. Yeah, so it's a learning, it's always a learning curve. And yes, it's giving us new opportunities, new challenges. And the best is some of the old data we had, the old way of doing business is not relevant to us today. But having said that, it seems certain fundamentals really hold true. Fundamentals such as purpose, authenticity, credibility, clarity, trust. Those are still the core and the core DNA of businesses and good communication. I think with that, we have come to the end of our panel discussion, and I'd like to hand it over to Rai to take it on from here. Thank you.
Thanks, CJ, and thanks again to each and every one of our panelists. I think that was a very insightful set of information and knowledge share that we had there. Can I just, I want to just run quickly through sort of what we touched on and kind of reiterate. So one of the things I think that our intentions with this webinar, as you know, it's a two-part webinar series. So we have, today we're talking about communication and the effective communication both on and offline. And tomorrow we'll be talking more about the actual marketing and branding perspective of it. So one of the reason that we broke this into two is because it is such an absolutely vast and also at the same time a key area right now. You know, as we're all working on navigating through and navigating in the aftermath of what has happened, which is not impacting us just sectorally, but also I think regionally as well as globally. The reason that we need to kind of see it's been, let's say in the last 2 months, it's been hitting the ground running, it's been maintaining operations, it's been business continuity, it's been how do we. But I think now it's come to the, and as you were saying as we started off, CJ, we're unable to produce. So what we don't have anything to sell. People are stuck at home. There's curfew, there's lockdown. There's no way for them to purchase even if they needed something. So that kind of that sort of clash there was just about, I think in the last couple of months, it's just about making sure your business keeps running, making sure that your teams keep running, that your lives and livelihoods are kept safe. But now moving forward, because we're starting to come out of lockdown across the globe, nonetheless, the data right now shows that this is something that will be continuing. You know, it's all the data, even I think on Friday, if I'm not mistaken, the latest, I'm sorry, Monday, the latest reports that had come out are talking about COVID-19 literally being here to stay, you know, that it's going to be at least until the next vaccine is found. They're expecting this to sort of go in waves of the disease, where like flu season, it will come and go until a vaccine is, an effective vaccine is found. So as much as we need to get out there and start selling and marketing and getting our products out there again to maintain our businesses, we also need to do it in a new and innovative way. So one of the key takeaways, I think, from our conversation today has been the need to innovate and adapt in terms of both your existing product and in terms of developing your product to suit the consumer. As Pubudu said, you got to have your hand on the pulse or finger on the pulse of your consumer, and you need to start working accordingly. So as Janice was talking about, the persona that you portray, it's absolutely essential because it's all online now. Consumerism was, I think, for the longest time based on the sensory experience. You know, you would touch, you would feel, you would see. When we talk about branding, we talk about using attractive colors. The colors, you know, there's multiple tests and focus groups and all of this done to see which colors are most important, which colors get the most attention, what sort of format works best, what sort of font size and font type works best, and all these various things that we use. But going forward, we're kind of diminished in our ability to use those sensory tools. So how do we then keep selling our product? How do we then keep selling our service if the customer is unable, or our client is unable, the end user is unable to touch and feel and get the, get the benefit sensory benefit of the product. So it's all going to be about brand loyalty going forward. So how do you build brand loyalty through your communication right now, I think is the key conversation that we need to be having out there. And I know there've been a lot of webinars and conversations and discussions about communication, but the reason that we decided to get into the same space, although it's a talked about topic, is to look at these other aspects that don't really get talked about much. The fact that it's the brand message, it's the brand positioning and the brand loyalty that we need to be building through our communication. The positioning of our communication, setting the right tone. So we were talking about the fact that it needs to be positive, it needs to be realistic, it needs to be frequent enough, and it needs to, as Mevan said, it needs to be something that you can trust and you can believe, because that I think is essential to moving forward. We also talked about presentation tips and how it should work in terms of how we present ourselves, both online and offline. Mostly online, as we were all talking about earlier, it's all mostly online now. So how do you, when you don't have the option of sitting in the room and reading your room and reading your audience, how do you then keep them engaged? So the difference between presenting to and engaging with an audience is the other thing that we wanted to talk about today that I think we were able to cover. And of course, empowering your communications through the data, which is what Pubudu talked quite a bit about, and how you need to analyze the data, use the data to your best advantage, and use that in really positioning your brand and building that brand loyalty, which is what we're going to talk about at length tomorrow with tomorrow's panel when we get there. So we actually had one question, which was with regard to the data and the analysis of the data. And it was talking about, is cohort analysis important about the customer? I think, Pubudu, you already touched on the answers to that. So I don't think it's necessary for us to go back into that question. But I just want to get it out there to let you know that we see you, as it were, and your question has been answered. We also have another question. Can we see things like artificial intelligence, big data, machine learning will come into this picture of marketing and sales during post-COVID rather than the pre-COVID? And I think, again, the answer to that is a very big and resounding yes, that's going to come from all our panelists. I do think that a lot of the detail we shared today and a lot of the information that we shared today has already covered pretty much the in detail or in-depth analysis answer to that. So I'm just going to say a resounding yes. And as we have all our panelists on screen, if there's anything that you would like to add to that, you can go ahead. But otherwise, I mean, I'm assuming you agree with me on that one, that it is definitely a go ahead. So yeah, I've got nodding heads all across the board, which is interesting to see. But yeah, thank you to every one of you on our panel. It's been a privilege to really work with you, to collaborate with you on this. It's been my privilege to bring such an interesting and important topic to the fore of our communications as AmCham. And a thank you, big thank you to each and every one of our panelists as well for being here, for joining us today. We had well over 150 participants actually logged in. As you know, we're live on Facebook as well, and post this session, the video will be shared on our YouTube channel as well. So do go there, click subscribe, ring the bell, as they keep saying, and be a part of that experience as well. So tomorrow we have an interesting follow-up on today's session, which is part 2 of positive positioning. We'll be talking about making the magic happen, which is effectively what the communication needs to be doing right now. I know right now, every time you talk about a sale or a deal or a closing of something, it's no matter how small it is, it's a little bit of a leap in your heart because you think, I managed to do that. You know, it's one entry shorter in my liabilities and one entry higher in my assets, and that's something that's important to all of us, whether we like it or not. As Pubudu said earlier, the P&L is at the end of the day a non-negotiable. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. We do look forward to each and every one of you joining us in that session, starting again at 4:30 tomorrow, same place, same time. In the meantime, thank you again. Have a wonderful evening, and stay safe, stay healthy, and God bless to each and every one of you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.